We finally have dual mode monitors in the mid-range price category, so you don't have to pay a premium just to change the native resolution and refresh rate. But is it a useful feature? And should we keep dual modes on high-end monitors only? Hey, I'm Nicholas from Ratings.com. Today we're going to take a look at the Dell Alienware AW2725QF. It's a 4K monitor that's not to be confused with 4K OLEDs with similar names, the AW2725Q and the AW3225QF. Unlike those, this one has an IPS panel and sits lower in the Alienware lineup. It has a 180Hz refresh rate, but its main selling point is its dual resolution feature that switches it to a higher 360Hz refresh rate with a lower 1080p resolution. This means it competes with other dual mode monitors like the LG 27G850AB. Considering all this, is this monitor worth getting? And how does it perform? Before we talk about the performance and picture quality, we'll look at the design. You'll notice that it doesn't look like the other Alienware monitors we've tested this year. It looks more like older Alienware models because it actually came out last year. It's still pretty simple with some branding and RGB lighting on the back. It comes with an ergonomic stand that's very easy to adjust. Plus, you can use the cutout in the stand for basic cable management to help keep your setup organized. Most of the inputs are set into the back of the monitor and face down, so they can be hard to reach. Back there, you'll see it has one DisplayPort and two HDMI ports, which is pretty standard stuff for a gaming monitor these days. It also has a USB-A and USB-C underneath the bottom bezel, which are easier to access when you want to plug in your devices. But because the USB-C port doesn't support DisplayPort All mode, you can't use it with your laptop. Unfortunately, it does lack a 3.5mm audio jack, which is disappointing if you want to connect headphones or speakers to the monitor, but it supports ARC for audio pass-through. With that out of the way, we can now talk about the gaming performance. For starters, the native refresh rate in the 4K dual resolution mode is 165Hz. You could choose between 170, 175, and 180Hz with the overclock setting. It's the same in the 1080p mode. You get a 330Hz native refresh rate that you can overclock to 340, 350, or 360Hz. All signals work over DisplayPort and HDMI, and the monitor supports all common VRR formats as well. If you're gaming with VRR, motion looks great at any refresh rate. Of course, it's the sharpest at its max of 360Hz, but both 4K and 1080p modes perform the same at 180Hz and below. The fast and super fast overdrive modes are similar, but the extreme mode has a ton of inverse ghosting above 165Hz. That said, the other settings still have blur and inverse ghosting with fast moving objects. You'll notice this more at lower refresh rates as there's persistence blur too. Plus, fast has more overshoot than super fast at 60Hz. So if you want a setting that you could use at any refresh rate, super fast is the better option. Motion looks pretty much the same in the 1080p and 4K modes, but there's one area where they differ: VRR flicker. In 4K, you might notice a bit of flicker in dark scenes when the frame rates jump around, though it's not very distracting. There is more flicker in the 1080p mode, which makes sense because it has a wider refresh rate range. But again, it's not too distracting and definitely doesn't look as bad as on a VA or OLED monitor. The monitor has very low input lag with any refresh rate and resolution, so your gaming feels responsive. This also helps for console gaming, especially if you play games that need fast reactions. Plus, it supports any signal with an Xbox or PS5, as long as you're in the 4K mode. So, while this is a pretty solid gaming monitor, what about its picture quality? Unfortunately, this is where it struggles a bit, especially in HDR. The low contrast ratio makes blacks look gray in dark rooms, and the edge-lit local dimming feature doesn't help much. The local dimming automatically turns on in HDR, and there's no way of turning it off. The monitor has 24 zones, but most of them stay on most of the time, which pretty much defeats the purpose of having local dimming anyways. Plus, whenever a zone actually turns off, there's a ton of haloing around bright objects, which is distracting with subtitles. On top of that, none of the zones turn on with really small highlights on a dark background, resulting in a loss of details and highlights looking muted. You could see this with our HDR brightness testing. The monitor maintains over 600 nits when there's a medium or large bright object on the screen, but dips to under 500 nits with 2% highlights. Even though it displays a wide range of colors in HDR, it fails to make them look bright and vivid. Overall, it's better to keep this monitor in SDR if you want to avoid the terrible local dimming in HDR. This is especially disappointing because the monitor supports Dolby Vision. It's a nice feature to have, but the monitor can't fully take advantage of it. At least it performs decently in SDR. It gets pretty bright, reaching over 450 nits with any content. You might not even need to put it to its max brightness unless you're in a sunny room. That said, reflections are an issue. Even with a matte coating, light bounces off the screen like a mirror. So it's fine if you have some lights around, but don't place it opposite your window. On the plus side, the monitor displays a wide range of accurate colors in SDR. Seriously, this screen is very accurate. It comes with an sRGB mode that barely has any noticeable issues, and the gamma tracking is fantastic. However, there are some white balance issues that you need to fix with a full calibration for perfectly accurate images. Plus, calibrating it gives you access to settings that are locked out in the sRGB mode, like gain, offset, hue, and saturation. One thing to keep in mind though is that the edges of the screen are darker than the rest. This means it can't maintain this accurate image across the screen, which is somewhat disappointing for content creation. Fortunately, the monitor keeps the image consistent from most angles. It's fine if you need to share the screen with someone sitting right next to you, though it looks darker and washed out from really wide angles. Basically, it doesn't have the widest viewing angles, but they're still okay. And lastly, if you're going to use this monitor for work or just browsing the web in between games, you'll be happy to know that text looks sharp in 4K. Of course, it looks a lot worse in the 1080p mode, but it's still fine enough to read text in games. This is pretty much the case with other dual mode monitors. So, is there anything that sets this monitor apart from the competition? In short, not much makes you go running to buy it. It falls a bit behind another dual mode IPS monitor, the LG 27G850AB. For example, the LG has a higher 240Hz refresh rate in 4K that switches to 1080p 480Hz in its dual mode. Plus, the LG has DisplayPort 2.1 bandwidth, which the Dell doesn't have, so it's the better choice if you have a high-end PC that can take advantage of it. The Dell still takes points back with its more accurate colors and better motion handling, but overall, these monitors are pretty similar outside of the specs. Both struggle with local dimming, so neither offers an advantage for HDR. You'd have to spend more on a dual mode OLED if that's what you want. But where the Dell really has an advantage is its price. It's truly a cheaper alternative to more expensive dual mode monitors like the LG or OLEDs. Sure, there are some clear trade-offs with it, like the fact that it has lower refresh rates. But overall, it offers the versatility of a dual mode monitor without breaking the bank, filling a nice niche in the market. Of course, if you find that the 1080p resolution with the higher refresh rate is too low for your needs, and you aren't willing to spend more, this is where you should instead consider a 1440p monitor without the dual mode. That's where the Dell AW2725QF comes in as a 1440p 280Hz option. It's pretty much a sweet spot between the dual modes of the AW2725QF, and it performs similarly otherwise. The AW2723DF does lack a few features, like HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, and it isn't as bright, so just something to think about. So with all that out of the way, is this monitor worth getting? If you're in the market for a dual mode monitor, but don't want to splash a ton of cash on a premium model, then yes, it's worth getting. Sure, it's not the best gaming monitor out there, but for a dual mode display at this price point, it does the trick. Of course, you could get more options outside of this dual mode market, but those are less versatile for playing different games. All in all, if you value versatility and cost above premium performance and picture quality, go for it. That's all for our review of the Dell AW2725QF. If you want more details, check out our written review. The link is in the description below. Until next time, I'm Nicholas from RTINGS.com, where we help you find the best product for your needs. Ciao.